We're really excited to have Stas here today. He is a professional camera operator and works with Indy regularly. So Stas, you're here today to talk to us a bit about the relationship between an actor and a camera op. Can you tell me a little bit about something you like to see from an actor when they first arrive?
Well, the first thing I should mention is that the role of the camera operator on set really depends on the relationship of the operator with the director of photography and the director, and there's really a range that role can take. And in the best case scenario, a camera operator is a creative person who is using his or her own sensibilities and understanding of what happens in the scene emotionally to present that through the eye of the lens. And the way I like to think about it is that the camera is also an actor in the scene, and the camera is also capable of conveying the emotional context in the same way that the actors are. So in best case scenario, if you like, as a camera operator, I am acting in the scene in the same way that the actors are acting in the scene, and we're a part of the same collaborative, creative team.
So what are some things that you've noticed with newer actors who are newer to sets? What do they ask you questions? Do they know that you're a team?
Well, I think the one thing I noticed with the newer actors is that they don't actually ask me nearly as many questions as an experienced actor would.
Okay.
I remember one of my first great experiences with an actor on set. This was back in film school, but the actor was a very, very experienced professional. And he was really aware of the focal lengths that I was in, and he really modified his movement based on how tight I was. And I remember he asked me for the first time what my focal length was, and when he found out that I was on 120 or something like that, he changed the way that he was standing up from a seating position to a standing position to make my life as a camera operator significantly easier. As I'm sure you're aware, one of the hardest things for a camera operator is to do a nice, even follow when an actor is standing up. That's incredibly difficult to do on a tight lens. So I very much appreciated his effort to make my life easier.
So it is important that an actor has an understanding of focal lengths.
Oh, it's incredibly helpful, absolutely. I really like feeling that I have a relationship with actors, and which is why I think when I step onto the set for the first time, I make sure to introduce myself to the acting team as soon as possible, because that also creates a level of trust and understanding, because you'll end up spending a lot of times together in very tight spaces and very stressful situations, so it's great to have that level of trust from the beginning.
That's really nice. As an actor, I don't think an op has ever introduced themselves to me, and it would be really lovely to be able to build that from the beginning. So once a cut is called, the first person an actor usually sees will be the camera op. They pop right up behind the camera. Can you tell me about some of the issues that might arise from that? I know actors sometimes tend to want a lot of emotional, creative feedback. What sort of things are you allowed to give an actor at cut?
That's a really interesting question, and a tricky situation to be put in diplomatically, because as you can imagine, the camera operator is the first person the actor will look at when it's called cut. And I try to be as neutral as possible at the end of every take. I try to make sure that I don't overstep my boundaries, and it is not my role professionally to tell actors what I think of their performance. And frankly, I don't think I'm qualified to make that judgment, because there are other people on set, primarily the director and the director of photography, who are making that determination. So I try to be as neutral as possible while also being supportive in any way I can.
So don't get your feelings hurt if a camera op doesn't say that was good.
Definitely don't get your feelings hurt. Though I would definitely expect the camera operator not to make some sort of a grimace at the end of a take. The camera operator is there to record the performance of an actor rather than make any sort of a judgment of whether that performance was good or bad.
Could you tell me about the different types of directors that you've worked with, and depending on their relationship with the actor, how that can impact your relationship that you have with an actor on set?
Yeah, I think a relationship that a camera operator has with the director is very specific to that particular pairing between the director and the camera operator, and also the level of trust that has been established between the camera operator and the director, which can be really tricky when you start working with the director, especially because camera operators are generally hired by the cinematographers, not the directors. So oftentimes you will meet the director for the first time on the first day of shooting. And it takes a while to establish the kind of a level of trust where the director can start feeling comfortable with the camera operator making certain decisions and certain judgments on set, whether or not you've shot on the right side of the line, whether or not you're missing a certain type of coverage, whether or not the camera operator will feel empowered to start a movement or begin a movement in the middle of a shot that had not been discussed prior to the shot. You really have to feel it out. Try to make sure that the director knows that you have the film's best interests in mind, and you start feeling it. You start noticing when the director is comfortable with you making those kinds of decisions by yourself, and that certainly includes the kind of interactions that a camera operator can have with actors.
So it would be wise for an actor to ask a director if they should depend on your notes, or if they should ask you questions directly.
I think in the best case scenario, the actor wouldn't have to have that conversation with the director. In the best case scenario, the camera operator and the director would reach the kind of a level of trust and establish a dynamic in which the actor would feel comfortable having that conversation with the camera operator. I think it's the job of a camera operator to kind of know which lines to cross and which not to.
Okay, great. So if that relationship between the camera operator and the director and the actor is established, what sort of things can an actor expect to be able to ask you and get an answer about?
I would think that a good rule of thumb is that an actor should feel comfortable having any sort of a technical conversation with the camera operator. It's, distance from camera, focal length, shot size, depth of field, movement speed, whether or not the camera team has had enough time or opportunities to rehearse a shot. I think discussing emotionality or performance is not that something should ever be discussed with the camera operator or anyone on the camera team, really, other than the director of photography and obviously the director himself or herself.
Great. So depth of field.
The depth of field is important because the actor would need to know how much room the actor would have to move freely without falling out of focus, which obviously the first assistant camera would be tasked with keeping the actor focused. But it's also in the same way that an actor might want to be careful moving too quickly, knowing that the lens is too tight. The actor might want to avoid moving too quickly, knowing that the depth of field is very shallow. So that's depth of field, frame size, focal length, speed of movement. The range of left to right that the actor can move, that sort of thing.
Great. But no performance notes?
Not in my opinion.
No asking for coffee?
Perhaps jokingly, but
Right.
I think the actor can expect the answer to be negative, and that's it.
How does the working relationship with an actor change when you transition to handheld?
Well, I talked a little bit earlier about how, in the best case scenario, a camera and a camera operator are also acting in the scene. And I feel like handheld operating is a perfect distillation of that idea, because obviously the camera operator feels much freer to move around and make adjustment. I think that gives the actors an opportunity to move in the scene a lot freer and try different things and try to play different reactions differently, and without having to be mindful about running into the camera or stepping somewhere that the camera can't possibly reach. Again, that really depends on the kind of level of trust and comfort between the actors and the camera operators. But in the best case scenario, I think there can be an established feeling on the set where an actor feels a lot more fluid and free when the camera is handheld.
Yeah. And does that fluidity and freedom come from rehearsal?
I think it definitely comes partly from rehearsal. I think a lot of it has to do with the skill and experience of the camera operator. This is one of those things that definitely comes with experience and can't necessarily be practiced in any way other than just being on set and working with actors and anticipating their movement, anticipating their reaction, and especially, I think this is the most important thing, really understanding the script and really understanding the emotional context of the scene, which allows you to anticipate reactions and to anticipate movement without really thinking about it consciously.
Can you tell me what are the most exciting things about handheld camera operating?
And one of my favorite film school professors once said that camera should feel like a force of nature, that the movement of the camera should not be noticeable. The camera should be revealing the scene as it's playing out, and I think handheld operating allows you the opportunity to do exactly that, is feel that the camera is observing the scene as it's unfolding without the restrictions of the camera position or the height, because a skilled camera operator can adjust all of those things on the fly as the scene is unfolding in front of the lens. And I think handheld gives you the opportunity to do that better than any other camera setup that I can think of. So it allows you to be present and acting and react emotionally to the scene as it's happening, in the same way that the actor is acting in the scene in the same way.
So as a force of nature and in revealing the scene, would you say that the camera is motivated by the movement of the actor?
The camera can be motivated by the movement of the actor, but the camera can be motivated by all kinds of different things. The camera can be motivated by sound that happens diegetically off screen that allows the camera to reposition itself. But I think the idea is that in the vast majority of cases, the camera would feel like a natural viewer is observing the scene. And the viewer of the film wouldn't necessarily notice the movement of the camera unless, of course, the movement of the camera was meant to be noticeable to achieve some sort of emotional result.
Okay.